So Caroline, to my understanding, you live in DC and commute to Boston, so you were already familiar with kind of remote work, but I'm wondering if you could share a bit of your experiences as a CEO of helping enable your team to be successful at remote work.
Yeah, great question. So under normal circumstances, I spend the week in Boston with our team. But in late February, we started to kind of adjust our workplace operation, and so as I said, we had kind of had this early look from what had been going on with our with our suppliers in China, and so we adjusted a little bit, our protocols of working in the office. We have a very open plan operating structure, which kind of reflects our collaborative operating philosophy and the fact that we're a platform and we collaborate very extensively across the organization. And so we started putting in place, a lot more sort of hand washing and sort of wiping and cleansing, but we also shut down to visitors relatively early from kind of places where there were outbreaks. And so we moved much more to kind of remote meetings from about mid-February, and we started to prepare the team for the idea that we would switch to work from home at some point, and it was kind of a question of when. So we actually had about a 3-week run into that idea, and we started to meet with the team weekly to basically discuss, kind of what we were seeing happening and, our expectation about what the evolution was. And then the first week in March, when the first cluster of cases was emerging in the Boston area, we took the decision to move to work from home. And in that case, we moved all of the non-lab-based employees to work from home, and we deemed a group of kind of lab essential employees to continue working in the lab. Now, and then we did 2 things, essentially. For that lab essential team, first of all, we asked them if they wanted to continue working. So that was the first thing. We gave them a choice. And we provided additional support to them. We said we gave them additional PPE. We allowed them to take non-public transportation to work that we reimbursed. If they wanted to park at the office and they hadn't previously, we gave them access to parking. And we then put them on an operating structure which minimized, it's sort of a shift working structure, which essentially assured their safety as much as possible. And so we can talk about that a little bit more, but that was sort of one piece of it. And we prioritized our lab work ruthlessly so that only kind of core programs that were essential to our priorities and progress were maintained. The remainder of the organization went to work from home, and there we did a couple of different things, right? We made sure, first of all, that if people needed additional resources to work from home, they could discuss with the manager what those were, and we supported them in getting those. We put in place additional meetings to sort of support this new operating infrastructure, and then other things like kind of meetups and so forth, so that there was some sense of community that had been there when we were all present in the office, was still present when we were not in the office. And, this kind of idea of actually spending time working on that virtual operating model was really important. And it took us a couple of weeks to really iron out the kinks there. So there's a social component. We have these virtual coffee times, meetups. We have a quarantini, a sort of a drinks hour at the end of the week. We were rolling out already a learning and development initiative. We made that entirely virtual. And then we focused the initial programs on things that were really about supporting adapting to change. So a lot of things that really helped people go through this change process. We use Slack a lot as a communication channel, but the organization is very Slack-centric. And so we put additional channels into Slack that were very supportive of things, additional resources that people needed. And we then made sure we just were very attentive to making sure that no one was left behind, right? And I think it's very easy to think that if I'm doing okay, right, I'm adapting, or, I see that my colleagues are adapting, that you kind of miss maybe, someone who's struggling a little bit, or, they've got lots of kids and it's just, the homeschooling isn't working, or they're dealing with elderly, family members. And so we were very attentive to that, and we made sure that we reached out to individuals And I personally, for instance, have one-on-ones now with a lot more people in the organization just to, A, stay connected with the work, but also, more importantly, just to make sure that everyone's okay. And I know that the rest of my team is doing that as well. And so it took us a few weeks to find our rhythm, probably 2 weeks, I would say. But now there's very much, I think, a sense that we're operating at, essentially the same pace that we were previously. We haven't missed any programmatic timelines, and it's generally working well. But there had to be, at its core, this concerted effort to establish that virtual operating model. It's not just a straight transfer from walking out of the office and keeping all the meetings that you have on your calendar and turning them into Zoom meetings. That's definitely not how it works.